salawat. So Hassan went through this already. I hope my cursor works. Let's see. As I am no alim and this is not a hadith, I just was trying to prepare some remarks for today, and I wanted to first of all say कि हम लोग सब इमाम हुसैन के ग़ुलाम हैं, and I had penned those lines कि क़ौम रज़िया की तमन्ना यही है मालिक, दिलो जान से बना दे हमें ग़ुलाम हुसैन. So I wanted to figure out कि if I were able to have a conversation with Imam Hussein, and we are living in this current time, as to what he would want me to talk about. So the remarks that I have prepared are mostly directed at myself. Maybe the adults and children in this room may get some benefit from it. So I want to start out with the story of Andrew Sullivan and Tristan Harris. And I don't know if any of you know these two people, but they came out with this argument that I used to be a human being. And in their mind, we have ceased to be humans because we have lost some very important human characteristics. Like we no longer have solitude, time with ourselves, to be with our thoughts, without some external force actually influencing them. We rarely get time to examine our life. Like Socrates said, examining our life is one of the most important things that we should do. And then finally, this is a knowledge economy. And knowledge economy requires that we be able to concentrate and do deep work. And we will explain that a little further. We are no longer capable of doing that. So why is that the case? Because I don't have it right now with me, but I have a constantly present connected companion. And this companion is all the time grabbing my attention. And I used to think that this is a moral failing that I have. That is, I have some lack of character, and that's why I'm not able to overcome this impulse. And I find myself helpless to quit. But come to find out that this companion that we have has been carefully crafted and engineered by the best minds in Silicon Valley. And it's designed so that it can captivate and manipulate our attention, primarily with a profit motive. So I find myself, it says here that on an average, a person checks it about 85 times. Probably I check it about 150 times a day. And it's created such an important disorder that's even classified in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Diseases as an addiction. And it does lead to a situation in which it creates a problem. And I will get to that problem. It not only reduces your productivity, it makes you helpless, but it creates another problem. So, what am I talking about? So we're talking about a cell phone. So in case you guys did not think about it. So this program came on 60 Minutes, and here Anderson Cooper is explaining that Silicon Valley has borrowed techniques from the gaming industry, from Las Vegas casinos, to design certain algorithms and design programs and apps in your phone or in your computer to captivate your attention. And it's worth listening. Let me see if I can play this.
this thing is a slot machine.
How's that a slot machine?
Well, every time I check my phone, I'm playing the slot machine to see what did I get. This is one way to hijack people's minds and create a habit, to form a habit. What you do is you make it so when someone pulls a lever, sometimes they get a reward, an exciting reward. And it turns out that this design technique can be embedded inside of all these products.
The rewards Harris is talking about are a big part of what makes smartphones so appealing. The chance of getting likes on Facebook and Instagram, cute emojis and text messages, and new followers on Twitter.
There's a whole playbook of techniques that get used to get you using the product for as long as possible.
Yeah, what kind of techniques are used?
So Snapchat's the most popular messaging service for teenagers, and they invented this feature called Streaks, which shows the number of days in a row that you've sent a message back and forth with someone. So now you can say, well, what's the big deal here? Well, the problem is that kids feel like, well, now I don't want to lose my streak. But it turns out that kids actually, when they go on vacation, are so stressed about their streak that they actually give their password to like 5 other kids to keep their streaks going on their behalf. And so you could ask, when these features are being designed, are they designed to most help people live their life? Or are they being designed because they're best at hooking people into using the product?
Is Silicon Valley programming apps, or are they programming people?
Inadvertently, whether they want to or not, they're shaping the thoughts and feelings and actions of people. They are programming people. There's always this narrative that technology is neutral and it's up to us to choose how we use it. This is just not true.
Technology is not neutral.
It's not neutral. They want you to use it in particular ways and for long periods of time because that's how they make their money.
So, I don't know if you heard Tristan Harris there. He had that Jerry Maguire moment in which he wanted to save mankind. And he says that they're programming our thoughts. And I didn't think that that was correct. So I talked about this place out here where there is reduced productivity, helplessness, and a low grade. And what is that low grade? That low grade is an anxiety disorder. I mean, I can guarantee that if I were to take the cell phones of each and every one of you today and say you are without a cell phone for about 24 hours, it's going to create an anxiety in you. And there are people like me and maybe Ames and Babes and a few others who grew up when a cell phone was not there. But for people who grew up when the cell phone was there in their teenage years, studies are finding that the anxiety disorder is off the charts. Even while you're using the cell phone, because you're really not giving your brain time to rest. So before smartphone use compared to after smartphone use, anxiety disorder is a lot higher in the generation 1 after smartphones became ubiquitous. So I talked about solitude, but if we think about it, for the first time in human history, we have banished all solitude. You know, you stand in a grocery line, you're waiting for a ticket at some place. What do? You take out your cell phone because it's connected, and you're constantly looking at some information that is coming to you from another person. Solitude was very important. It is important to be time alone with your own thoughts. And before the advent of media, it would occur on a daily basis. So, like I was explaining a little bit more in detail, there have been billions of dollars spent with the smartest minds, with the presence of a high-speed wireless internet, with algorithms that I will talk about, that have been designed so that every time you have solitude, you would take your phone out. So solitude is necessary because our brain requires downtime. If we have no downtime, if we are saying all hands on deck all the time, the brain does not function well for what we really need to do, And that aspect is our work, our deep work, the knowledge economy that we are a part of. And I will explain what knowledge economy is. And this kind of constant interaction is taking us away from being able to be focused. Okay, so there are some adults in the room, and I want to ask Heather out there as to what is the icon on the top left?
Snapchat.
Snapchat. Does everybody else knew that? Okay.
No.
Is there any icon here in this room, in this place, that any people in here don't recognize? Okay, there's some, but
Yeah, I don't recognize some of these.
okay, but I guess I asked the question wrong. If I were to, like, let's say, ask what is the second from the top on the right-hand side, what is that?
Reddit.
Reddit, okay? And then below that is Meetup. So I don't think there'll be anything that here that the whole group would not recognize. What is the one with the T?
Twitter.
Twitter is with the bird tweeting.
Oh, that's Twitter.
You guys recognize that?
Tumblr?
Tumblr? Nobody knows what Tumblr is? Okay.
I know
And what is
green.
what is the top top right?
And the red.
TikTok.
TikTok. Okay. So Aim says she knows the green, which is WhatsApp. What is the red?
Red is
YouTube.
YouTube.
Okay. So I wanted her to say that, but okay. Now,
She knows it.
whenever you are thinking about this, you're going to say, hey, WhatsApp is so important. There's so much usefulness in it. So there is a usefulness argument that you would say technology is important. But you should not only think about it from a usefulness standpoint alone, because autonomy is also important. If you find yourself hopelessly hooked and addicted and spending all kinds of time, like for example, my day begins by looking at my news feed. So what I'm trying to say is that I almost feel like a junkie, powerless to stop. Why is that? You know, Facebook started out in the beginning as a picture sharing compilation on the internet. I would post my pictures, my friend would post their pictures, and we would look at each other's pictures. But then, when they were going public, they needed to increase their bottom line, they needed to increase their revenue. So they tried to figure out how can we do that. So they devised a disingenuous or ingenious method, and that is that they created something called a like, or another icon which is called love. So this radical re-engineering of this platform was that if I post information, I keep going back to look at to see how many likes I got, how many people tag me someplace else, whether I have been shared on Instagram. And it turns out that these social approval indicators are something that affects our psychological vulnerabilities. We want to look at it because our brain is programmed in such a way that it's going to be hard to go back and touch on Facebook to recheck and see whether something is different. So it's become less about what others are posting, it's more about social approval indicators. It exploits the psychological vulnerabilities that I talked about. And it is almost impossible not to go and recheck it. So like Tristan Harris was saying, this is not just by accident. This is based on algorithms that these guys have devised from gaming industry, from Las Vegas casinos, because once the slot machines became digital, they could program in a reward. And later on, I'll talk about a company called the Dopamine Labs, that these rewards are sometimes purposely withheld. And they are based to some degree on a psychologist in the US in the 1950s, and his name was B.F. Skinner. How many of you know about Skinner?
Yeah.
Want to see a show of hands? Okay, so very few. Okay, so I said 150 times a day, 8 out of 10 smartphone users check the device within 15 minutes of waking up. 1/3 of Americans would give up any kind of wealth opportunity than lose their cell phone. And then why are we so addicted? So Skinner did many experiments. One of them was a pigeon experiment. So in this pigeon experiment, there's a lever. The pigeon goes and pecks on that lever, and he pecks on the lever, they will get a reward. So it was a simple experiment. Peck the lever, when you need food, you get a reward. But then Skinner changed the rules. And what he decided to do was to do something called intermittent positive reinforcement. What that meant was that you would get a reward sometimes when you peck it, at other times you would not get it. Sometimes you have to do 2 pecks. Sometimes you have to do 5 pecks. Sometimes you have to do 10 pecks to get the reward. So what happened? When I asked Adam this question yesterday, do you know what he predicted? What did you say, Adam?
The pigeon would go crazy.
The pigeon would go crazy. So to his surprise, he noticed that the pigeons went berserk. One pigeon tapped the lever 87,000 times in 14 hours, even though he got very few rewards. So I want to tell you that all of us, especially me, we are in a Skinner box as far as the Silicon Valley companies are concerned, because they are trying to engage and captivate us and subjugate us. So I said I'd talk about dopamine labs because it's a lot more sinister than you think. This intermittent positive reinforcement is not as simple as you think. So why did this company name itself dopamine? Can anybody tell me what dopamine does?
Makes you feel good, right?
It's a pleasure neurotransmitter. So every time you get a hit from dopamine, you say, I liked it. I want to do it again. So what Dopamine Lab's sole purpose is to track people who are using apps on the internet and see how they use it so that they can program the reinforcement algorithm to that specific user. Let me say that again. They're making billions of dollars. There's Indians also in that company because they are using the application, because when you're using an application, the company is able to see what kind of clicks you're doing, how much time do you spend on a screen. They're using that so that they can program an algorithm of reward that is specifically designed to hook you. And I did not know that. Okay? I want to leave that for a few minutes or for a few seconds because this is a game that many people in this room play. And the reward system for this game is very similar. Okay, now, is there a downside to it? Okay, you're spending time on the phone, you are losing deep work, you're losing concentration, you're losing solitude. But one of the biggest problems that is happening is that we are losing our ability to talk to each other. I would rather text somebody than get into a difficult conversation with them. Many young children are coming to the workplace in which they are incapable of having a verbal conversation with their boss. Adults are not good role models because we are doing exactly the same thing that children are doing. So the children cannot look at adults and say, hey, there is a role model that I can follow. So Sherry Turkle did a lot of work on reclaiming conversation, and what she found in her research is that most of us want to communicate digitally. Face-to-face conversation is very complicated, it's nuanced, and it's a practice skill. You just can't get it overnight. How many of you have heard about something called 10,000 hours? What does that 10,000 hours mean? So in order to master a skill, it takes you 10,000 hours of practice before you get good at it. So our teenage years are meant so that we have a social life in which we can practice verbal skills that we are losing right now, and adults are losing that practice also. Because when you look at face-to-face conversation, you have to draw on several fields: sociality, neuroscience, psychology, because the human brain is a social processing computer. When I'm talking to you, I'm mentalizing as to what your brain is thinking. And it's such a complicated dance, and there's so much neuronal processing that's going on that you're not going to get it overnight. It requires 10,000 hours, and we should look into that. Now, what is knowledge economy? Everything other than entry-level jobs in this world, in the world that we live in, is knowledge economy. All of us practice it on a daily basis. You take information in, you manipulate the information, you use the information, and then you create new information that can be of use to solve the problem that you're facing. Even repairing cars, because the symptoms of a car problem may require not a playbook, but have the knowledge to figure out what it is. There are no guidelines. When somebody is looking at giving you a prescription for your vision, it's not as simple as just taking out a contact lens and giving it. It requires evaluation of the curvature of your cornea. It requires a know-how of what is available. It requires a know-how of whether the eye is moist or not moist, what kind of solution that it needs. Everything that we are dealing with now is a knowledge economy. And knowledge economy requires us to be using our brain in such a way, because it's cognitively very intensive, and it requires that we don't have interruption. So what do? I take out my cell phone in the morning and I'm looking at the news feed. Then from the news feed, I may look at the smartphone and see what Ames is posting. Then I'll go to my email. Then I'll go and look at what's happening in La Vuelta, the cycling event. Then I look at my text feed. And then when I'm done with it all, what do you think I do? I go back to my news feed. So this is how this phone is hooking me in. And I have to contend with these distractions all the time. And this was not supposed to come like this. On here was a manuscript that I was writing. I was writing a manuscript for a book, a textbook on low-carb medicine. And when I'm writing that manuscript, I don't have time for focused, uninterrupted attention. And the reason is that there is something called context switching. If you look at your phone, and then you go back to writing the manuscript, it takes time for you to be able to cognitively get back in and write something that is creative. It's not going to happen overnight. So there is attention residue that happens, which is that when you get distracted, coming back to the task that requires deep focus and concentration may take you about 15 to 20 minutes before you are creative again. And I want to let you know that being able to write something, being able to do your job good is a practice skill. It's not going to happen if you don't practice it. So what are the solutions? And these solutions are mostly for myself, and I don't know whether these solutions will work. And I'm not very good at them either. I accumulated most of this information from looking at the work of Andrew Sullivan, Tristan Harris, and Cal Newport. How many of you know who Cal Newport is? Okay, Amadou says he knows Cal Newport. Anybody else? Okay, it's worth looking at him. I ordered a book of Cal Newport for our daughter. Okay, so what he talks about is, and I want to see if any of you are ready to embark on this challenge. I want to be participating with you in this.
Oh yeah, I'll do it. No problem.
He never picks his phone.
So he recommends a 30-day detox. And in a 30-day detox, for me, this is for me, I would have to get rid of all of those apps. The YouTube, the Twitter, the WhatsApp, the newsfeed, the Facebook, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, okay? For my work, I may not be able to get rid of the email, but I can put in certain times when I look at it and my text messages and all that. In that 30 days, it's not just detox, but you have work to do. And that work means that you have to figure out what your innermost values are. What would Ahl Bayt want you to do? What would Imam Hussain want you to figure out as to what you are here on this world for? And many of this would require looking at new things. Like, I'm very bad at it, but maybe I can come and spend time with you guys and have a conversation. Some of us may need an exercise routine. Some of us may want to discover nature and see what it is all about. And then for a few of us, we need to see whether we need to practice skill at improving our work. Okay, so how many of you have heard about Marie Kondo? So few. So who knows her best here?
She's too good to be followed.
So what Marie Kondo does is that she takes the clothes from your closet and throws everything out. And the only clothes that go back in are clothes that would bring you joy and happiness wearing them. So that means there'll be a very small subset. For me, that may be like 5% of my closet. So I'm using the Marie Kondo example because after the 30-day declutter, what you want to do is to only put back the apps that are consistent with the values that you have explored during those 30 days. That app has to be used in such a way it should have so much value that you say, okay, I'm going to use it and I'm going to bring it back into my life. Now, in the emojis, all of you are very good at emojis, right? So what is FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. So if you have a maximalist approach, you would say, I'm going to bring back all the apps in because I don't want to miss out anything. So this is another emoji that I put together and it's called BOMO. So what does that mean?
Bring only.
So that is benefit of missing out. So when you miss out something, it gives you time to do work that is really meaningful to you. In the setting of clothes or in the setting of media, less is more. So that's what I wanted to convey. Now,
Go to Majalis.
sure. So reintroduce technology that enhances value and that you hold deep. Design methods for optimal use. Put in some safeguards. You know, it just shouldn't be that you bring everything back and you get hooked to the same thing. And I want to really add that this is something that I struggle with myself, and I don't have the answers, and I don't know if I will be successful. But we are one of the smartest people in the world. You just look at our family. You guys should feel very good that you have a Daba who was the president of the Society of Automotive Engineers. You should be very happy that you have Raza Mir, who's written several books, who is a professor of business at Rutgers. You have a famous Zakira NC who is no longer with us. So you come from very good stock. And I don't want either myself or the adults or the children to waste their life away because they have not recognized how we are being manipulated. So I think that's all I had. I want to see whether people want to do a book club on digital minimalism. I want to see how many of you, I don't want people to raise their hands, but I want to see how many of you want to sign up for a detox, declutter, and do it as a group. So I thought that when given an opportunity like this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about.
Very nice.
So what?